Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and today I'm doing an anxiety med update. It's been about 3 months, a little over 3 months since I started both Zoloft and buspirone, which I'm going to call Buspar throughout this video because it's easier to pronounce than buspirone. I had to look up the pronunciation. But I'm going to share all of the nitty-gritty, potentially embarrassing details about being on these medications, but I figure maybe this will help somebody who's kind of on the edge about starting it, because I certainly was for a very long time, and looking back, I wish I had been on them way longer. So I'm going to share my experiences, side effects, the positive side effects, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy this video. So this is not my first rodeo with Zoloft. I have actually been on it in the past, and I was on it for something completely different. I've mentioned this on my channel before, but I'll give you a little bit more detail about it. A few years ago, it was like probably about 4 years ago, I started to deal with some cyclic depression, and I really wasn't sure why until I started period tracking, and I realized that the depression was lining up from the time that I would ovulate until I would have my period. Once my period came, everything regulated. I felt like a normal person, but it was absolutely terrifying, and I wound up going to a few different doctors. I wound up really scaring one nurse practitioner because I came into her office and broke down crying on her, and she kind of was like, here are some supplements that might help you. It was honestly a really horrible experience, and I left feeling so sad, but eventually I went to my primary care, and she wound up being the best resource for me, and she made me feel not crazy because I felt completely crazy. I had never experienced depression before. I am a very lighthearted, resilient sort of person. It's just, I don't know, it's part of my personality. So when I started having these depressive episodes, it was terrifying. I was scared to death because when you've never experienced that before and suddenly it feels like it comes out of nowhere, oh my gosh, horrible. Anyways, we found out that I had PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it totally lined up with my period. So it was honestly a relief. I kind of knew that's what it was because, you know, you're Googling your symptoms, and that's what I was diagnosed with at the time. So my doctor wanted me to try Zoloft, and then she also wanted to put me on birth control. And I said okay to it. I started both of those medications, and we kind of upped the dose of the Zoloft because I was feeling better, but I wasn't feeling perfect. And we upped the dose of the Zoloft, and I noticed absolutely no difference. So I actually just stopped taking it. I felt like it was not doing anything for me. And over time, being on birth control is really what seemed to control the symptoms. And after a couple of months, I felt better. And I've been asked before about the PMDD and how I deal with it, and honestly, I don't deal with it anymore. I don't know what happened, but since I had my colectomy done, it's like my body regulated itself and my hormones kind of balanced. It's probably because I was just using all of my resources, all of my energy to try and deal with this diseased colon, and then once it wasn't a problem anymore, the rest of my body could do what it needed to do to function properly. So I was only dealing with the PMDD for probably 1.5 to 2 years, and then once I got my colectomy, I haven't had issues with, and I have not been on birth control since, and I had not been on Zoloft since. So moving forward, I was doing okay until the last couple of years, and what I started to feel I could differentiate from the PMDD, I started to have anxiety creeping in. And, you know, I was trying not to think about it because there were so many stressful things going on in life, and I knew that, you know, that was probably the cause of my anxiety. So it was really, really horrible right before our wedding. that whole heart attack feeling that I told you about, I was having that pretty much nonstop until our wedding day. And when we got married and everything wound up being fine, I was fine for a little while, for a short while. I had a little bit of relief after our wedding. But as you guys, I know a couple of you have asked about this, our barn. We have been working on our barn project for, I think, over 3 years at this point, and it has become the source, the most major source of my anxiety. It has been such a process, such an unexpected process, so many positives with it, but so many negatives. It has been a complete roller coaster for us, and that has honestly just destroyed me mentally. And at some point I will share everything with you about how it's gone. It's for anybody, it's a stressful process, but just it's been crazy. That's all I can say. It's been crazy, and that's why I really haven't talked about it on here. I'm just waiting for an appropriate time. But because of it, I have been suffering. I had that little break after our wedding, but it just slowly increased as time went on, and we're still working on the project to the point where I couldn't function. I could not function one bit, which is really hard on a marriage, a relationship, relationships with your friends, your family, things like that. And for a long time, a very long time, I would talk with Zach about, do you think that I should go to a doctor? And Zach wanted me to, and I would just kind of build up the nerve to do it and then not do it, because I didn't want to be on any hardcore anti-anxiety medications, and I had been on Zoloft, which is like the calmest one, and it has no known risks for pregnancy, and I think a lot of the other ones do, which is why I was like, the only thing I would do is Zoloft. That's all I would take, and that didn't work for me for PMDD, so why would I think it would work for me now? Anyways, so it got really, really bad. March, all through winter, March was really terrible. And just the exhaustion that it caused, the absolute, just like crying fits, the uncontrollable, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything. And then once I'd calmed down, just the exhaustion would kick in from these anxiety attacks. And, I was very aware of why I was having the anxiety, but it's like your hands are tied. I couldn't just not get rid of the stress. There's no way to do it. So what wound up happening was I was getting my sinus surgery done, and I just so happened to need an appointment with my primary care, the same office that I saw for the PMDD, and I knew that they were really good with that stuff. They had a wide variety of experience there, so I felt really comfortable with them. And when I went in for my kind of like pre-op physical, which I needed to have done, I mentioned it. She was like, so were you having any other issues going on? I said, yes. And the problem with me is I get like so shaky, and it's hard for me to talk when I talk about it. Like, I can feel myself now getting like a little shaky. I was like, yes, I am struggling with what I believe is anxiety. And I kind of just explained some of our situation to her, and she completely understood it. And so she said, yeah, okay, would you be comfortable trying Zoloft again? And I was like, well, it didn't really work for the PMDD, but yeah, I'm willing to try it. And then she said, for more anxiety-inducing times, to use the Buspar. So I think when I originally talked about it, I talked about Buspar as like a PRN, and I kind of related it to Ativan or something like that. It is not like that. It is not at all used like that. What I meant by it was the Zoloft is my maintenance drug. The Buspar you have to take for a number of weeks to feel any effect, but it's meant for more stressful times. So just in this period with the work we're doing on the barn, I'm taking it, and then as things calm down in life, I can pull back on it and just be on the Zoloft maintenance-wise. I had a lot of concerns with the Zoloft potentially not working for me because of my previous experience. So as soon as she prescribed the medications, I came home. I felt like such a sense of relief. I immediately told Zach, I was like, I'm gonna start medication. Like, hopefully this is an answer for me and I can be a real person again, like function, work, do things. Like I felt trapped. I felt locked down. I felt like, how can I do anything? How can I go out of the house without melting down? How can I think about anything without melting down? Like, that's where I was. And I knew that that wasn't reasonable. It wasn't, I couldn't live that way. So I was so relieved. But I hopped on the computer so I could look further into these medications, just find out more information. I was familiar with both. I gave Zoloft more frequently than I did Buspar, but I gave them as a nurse. I'm familiar with them, you know, got my nursing drug guide. I pulled that out too. And what I found interesting about Zoloft is that I found a number of studies talking about its efficacy with depression versus anxiety. And apparently it is not so effective with depression, but it's a lot better for anxiety. And I noticed that to be the case. It took a few weeks. It did take a few weeks, and I made a couple update videos. There was one where I was like, you know, I'm not really sure if it's working or not. We kind of had a calm period with all the stuff we're doing. So I didn't know if it was that was making me feel better or if it was the medication. But now it is safe to say, at this point, 3 months in, there's been so many ups and downs, just with everything in life. It is safe to say that it is clearly working because I feel like a different person. I am mad at myself for not getting on the medication earlier because I feel like I missed the whole period after getting married. Like yeah, it sucked. I didn't like who I was. I did not, to be honest with you. So I'm just mad I wasn't on it sooner. It made such a difference. I can breathe. I can think about stressful things without having a complete meltdown. And what I've actually noticed, the Zoloft, I think, is what really made a huge difference. But the Buspar, even though it's like a long-term as needed medication, you have to be on it for a bit of time for it to work. I do notice that if I forget a dose in the morning, I can feel a little bit of anxiety creeping in. So I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that I take that regularly. And once I take it, you know, absorb it, I can feel myself calm down. It's crazy. I am so thankful for it. Like, truly. So yeah, that's my experience with that. Of course, though, more so with the Zoloft, from my understanding, I can't completely rule out the Buspar causing this or not causing it because I basically started them at the same time. But I know the side effects. I know the known side effects of being on Zoloft, and I definitely had some negative side effects that I will share with you. So if you are interested, if you're maybe questioning going on the medication, you know, just something to be aware of. I think the first thing that I noticed, and I actually didn't relate it to being on the medication, a couple of you guys actually commented on my video saying, hey, watch out for this. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening, and I didn't know why. It's probably because of the Zoloft. So the first thing that I noticed was night sweats. I'm usually a cold person. I'm quite small, so I am cold a lot. So when I was having night sweats, I was kind of shocked. Even if I took a nap in the middle of the day, I would wake up drenched, my clothes just soaked. And so that was kind of a buzzkill. I was like, this isn't great. But, you know, it's not that bad of a side effect where I was like, I'm going to stop the medication. And from my understanding at the time, I was like, this may go away over time. And it did. I don't have that anymore, thankfully, because I don't feel like doing the sheets every day. But it was definitely a problem from probably about week 2 to week 5 or 6. And then it just kind of went away. Another thing that I noticed was I was struggling to sleep, and it wasn't fall asleep. I could fall asleep totally fine. And this is something that I still am having a little bit of trouble with. I have trouble staying asleep. So Zach tends to go to sleep a bit later than me. I go to bed like 10 o'clock. I'm a grandma. I know it. If I go to sleep around 10 o'clock and he comes up a couple hours later, it's like I've gone through a sleep cycle or something, and he just happens to come up when I'm at the end of it, and I wake up and I'm awake. So that's been a little bit of a struggle because, you know, depending on when I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes it's like 4 or 5 a.m. and I'm like, all right, I guess I'll just start my day because I can't fall back asleep. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Honestly though, I'm getting enough sleep anyway, and it isn't impacting me that greatly. I don't know. And I do notice, especially now that it's warmed up and I'm in the garden and I'm much more physically active because I'm just doing stuff outside, it's gotten a little bit better because, you know, I'm using up energy and working harder, and you just sleep better when that happens. So the last side effect, which I really was not okay with when it started, and it didn't take long for it to start. Again, it was all of these symptoms kind of started around the 2-week period. I think that's when I really started to, you know, the medication just started to do its thing. Was during intimate moments. Yes, I was not thrilled. And that is something that I remember from being on Zoloft the first time. It's like there's no focus on sex. And it's not a low libido problem so much as I cannot focus in the moment. If the bed creaks, if my ostomy bag crinkles, there are no achievements, if you get what I'm saying. I'm trying to be YouTube friendly. I just, no focus. And that really bothered me because that's an intimate thing between you and your other person, whoever you're with. And that's something that I find very important in a relationship. It's a closeness that we have, and I felt like it was taken away from me. And I remember just being like, Zach, I don't know what to do. And he was so helpful. He was looking up, you know, Zoloft and how people found ways around that or how to kind of help that. And he's just the best. But he was kind of helping me through that, and he was looking up forums and stuff where people were talking about it. And he said, well, some people had it last forever as long as they were on the medication, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people said that it does go away after a couple months. And I was like, all right, like I guess, I mean, I was considering stopping it because of it. That was the only side effect where I was like, I'm not a fan of that. So I said, okay, I'll give it a few months. We'll see what happens. And I am very happy to say that that seems to have resolved itself. I would say in the last few weeks. So it probably wasn't until month 2.5 where that kind of went away. And now I'm back to normal and things are good. So depending on who you are and what's important to you, that may not be a big deal to you. It was to me, it was to us. So I'm glad that I stuck with the medication though, because all of the side effects almost completely have resolved. The only one that I have trouble with still, like I said, is sleeping, but I'm not affected by it. I'm not tired all the time. Like, we're okay there. I'm mad at myself for allowing, I guess, the stigma. I don't really, you know, I see a lot of people posting online about it, and I never felt the stigma. Like, if I told people that I was on medication, I don't have a problem with that. It was more in my mind. I'm like, you are too resilient for this. You're too strong to be on this medication. You don't need it. You can fight through this. And I let that side of it take over in my mind for far too long. And when I eventually went on it, I was like, no, this is so helpful. And you can actually be a strong person now. You can do all the things. You can work, you can manage the house, you can play with your dogs, you can clean, you can paint, you can garden, you can do all these things that you wanted to do but were too busy basically crying to do it. Don't let that make it so you're not living your life. Because I get it. You're not living. You're just so focused on the anxiety. It's horrible. I never thought I would deal with that stuff. I don't know. So I let it get in the way. I'm mad at myself for it. I'm glad that I'm on it now. I will be on it either until I don't need it anymore or it doesn't work for me. I am just so grateful. Now with the Buspar, I am not sure. I haven't looked up the risk for pregnancy or anything like that because we're not doing anything about that right now. We are taking a pause on that just to, you know, get everything else in life situated, basically. So I don't know the risk for that, but the plan was that the Zoloft I could be on throughout a pregnancy if I were to have one, and the Buspar, hopefully at that point in life, things are more settled and I wouldn't need it necessarily. That's my hope. So that is the full update. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below or share your experience with different anxiety meds. It's a trip. It's a trip and it's not a fun one, but you will get there. They can give such great relief. So anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next. Bye guys.